Alright, hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Games I Bought Recently, and as I promised in my previous episode of Games I Bought Recently, this episode was going to be all retro games, and let me just say, guys, I went overboard. Like, this here is this is not like from within the past month or two. Everything I have here is from the past, probably since November, before Christmas. But, well, I mean, I picked up a lot of good stuff that I really want to play, but my god, this is a lot of stuff, so let's get started here. Starting off, it's been a really long time since I picked up any games for the 32X, but I finally got a pretty decent price on these two games, and they're both some of the more uncommon and hard to get complete games on the 32X, by no means exceedingly rare, but not the easiest to get. First of which is Zacks' Mother Base 2000. I was a pretty big Zacks fan on the ColecoVision as a kid, so I'm really curious to see how the 32X version plays. I watched a video of this online, and it actually looks pretty impressive. I've always been a big fan of this sort of faked isometric 3D kind of viewing angles in games, and this one seems to be very similar to that, as well as Shadow Squadron, which I'm trying to get the sequel to this game, which only came out on the Japanese Sega Saturn Stellar Assault, but that's a pretty hard game to get. But this, once again, uses a lot of 3D polygons. Pretty impressive looking for the 32X. So, one of these days I'll get around to hooking up my 32X, because I gotta find that stupid little cord, the cord that everybody loses to plug the 32X and put it into the Genesis. And then I gotta find the metal brackets to put in my Genesis so that the 32X can sit in it. 32X is a pain in the ass, but once you get hooked up, it's worth it. Also, I picked up some Atari Jaguar games, and it's been a really, the funniest thing is, when I picked these games up, I looked at my collection, I said, wow, I have not bought an Atari Jaguar game since I first got my Atari Jaguar when it first came out, and all the games I owned for it were the original games that I bought, so I have not gotten around to hooking up my Jaguar and playing these yet, but I plan on doing that very soon, probably doing a live stream of it or something. But yeah, it's just very cute. It just struck me, I'm like, wow, I've never picked up a game for my Jaguar in, like, geez, long time since I got the Jaguar. Back when you could buy it in the stores, and back when there would be an aisle of Jaguar games to check out. Those were the days. First up, I just have this in plastic right now because I don't want the box getting crushed, because this is actually pretty rare. This is a game called Skyhammer. What this is, it's really interesting. It was developed by the same guys that did Alien vs. Predator on the Atari Jaguar, which many regard as their favorite Atari Jaguar game on the system. This is made by the same guys. However, this was never officially released for the Jaguar. This is actually Songbird Games, who has like official rights to publishing and releasing old Atari Jaguar games that never saw the light of day. They released this, and this came out in 2000. But this is like fully box complete and everything like that, and this is considered basically an official release for the Jaguar, since it was developed for the system back then, just never officially released. This is a first-person flight game where you sort of fly around in an environment that really reminds me of like Blade Runner and stuff. Very, very cyberpunk kind of look to it, and it looks like a lot of fun. It's very rare, so if you ever find a copy of that, you're gonna have to pay quite a bit. This here is extremely rare for the Atari Jaguar, and this is Towers to Plight of the Stargazer. And this has the very unique honor of being the absolute 100% only RPG available on the Atari Jaguar. It plays in the first person, similar to, think of it like if you ever play the 3DO games like Dungeons and Dragons, the first person Dungeons and Dragons games, something like that. But I'm really curious to hook this up and play. It's supposed to be really hard, but that is definitely the rarest Jaguar game I now own. I was really excited to pick this up and play it, and I actually had a lot of fun with this, and that's Defender 2000. I'm a huge Lamasoft fan, and Jeff Minter fan. Those of you that ever played Space Giraffe or Tempest 2000, 3000, you know his style of games. He also has some games out on the iPad, but the Lamasoft games have always had this really strange, psychedelic look to them, I guess you can say. And this game follows in that same style. It plays like classic Defender, super fast, like horizontally scrolling screen. You're trying to rescue the humans that are getting captured by the aliens. But the over-the-top sound effects style, presentation, and music really sets this one apart. I had a lot of fun with it. My game did glitch out, though, one or two times, so I lost my high scores. I don't know if that was my Jaguar or the cartridge. I'm not sure what happened. but I was kind of disappointed. I also finally picked up a copy of Tempest 2000. Once again, another Llamasoft game, and I was a huge fan of Tempest 3000, and I don't know why it took me this long to get a copy of 2000. I think I was just trying to be very patient to try and get this game for a good price, and I did. And I played it, and I had a lot of fun. I don't like it as much as Tempest 3000 on the new one, but once again, this is another really stellar Atari Jaguar game, and yet another title for the system that really breaks that mold of the stigma that everybody thinks that the Atari Jaguar is just a garbage console, and that's far from the truth. There's a couple of gems on that system that are really worth playing. What to tackle next? Let's do Super Nintendo. Alright, so for the Super Nintendo, I got a couple of homebrews. And what that means is these are, I should say, reproductions, not homebrews, sorry. These are games that were only released in Japan, and then they never released over here in America or anywhere else, but they received fan translations, and instead of having to use an emulator and ROMs and all that stuff, which I just don't deal with, I wanted a physical copy of these two games, so I got reproductions of them on cartridge. First of which is Treasure Hunter G, which is a Square Enix game developed by Sting. And for those of you that know Squaresoft, it's been so long since I've had to say that. A Squaresoft game developed by Sting, and Sting, you'll remember for the series on PSP, Game Boy Advance, and stuff such as Riviera, The Promised Land, Yggdrasil Union, Hexy's Force, games like that, Knights of the Nightmare. This is developed by them. This is a strategy, sort of turn-based strategy, grid-based RPG that has a really awesome, at least the fan translation I think is amazing. A really funny story to it and characters, and the battle system is a hell of a lot of fun. It has that Sting flair, so being a big fan of the previous Sting games, this one I can definitely see the influences early on with the Sting developers. But I've been having a lot of fun with this. I'm about 10 hours in, I think. It's been a while since I played it, but I definitely want to go back and try and finish this sometime. Also, I picked up Treasure of the Rudras, which is a Squaresoft game that was developed by Squaresoft for the Super Nintendo, never received a release outside of Japan. This is a really unique RPG in that you play different storylines. So it's not just one central storyline with a group of characters. You switch between different characters. So when you start the game, you can pick a different character, and they have a totally different storyline, different gameplay, different bosses, different everything from the other characters you can choose from. But the really unique aspect about this game, it has a turn-based RPG battle system, but the really unique feature is you learn words and phrases, and you piece your spells together yourself. So this is it's the hard part here because this was fan translated, so going from Japanese symbols and words and stuff and putting it into English and trying to get that same effect in this game is really hard, because essentially what you're doing is you're taking words, piecing them together. So let's just say you take, I forget the exact names in here, but let's just say you take Zio, Ra, Ma or something, 3 different words. That's not the exact words that are in the game, but just as an example. That would say make a fire spell that targets all enemies, and it's the more powerful version of that. And you can mix and match different words to create different spell effects. But the really cool thing is, it's not just, you don't just find the words in the game world. You can actually type them in. So I can make a spell that's called PeteDorr. And PeteDorr might be a lightning spell that targets, one enemy, but it's really powerful. Or I can say make a spell that's called, Techno Kitten Adventure or Keyboard Cat. Let's say, I did actually make a spell called Keyboard Cat, and I forget what it did, but let's just say it healed my party. It's really funny because depending upon what words you use, it'll produce different spell effects. Of course, some things get lost in translation, and it's not exactly how it was when it was released in Japan, but it's a really unique game, awesome music. The graphics are pretty good for the time. This was a really late release on the Super Nintendo as well. Also, for Secret Santa this year for Christmas, I know Christmas, right? So long ago. I wanted to just thank Mother Wee Cody really fast for hooking me up with. He got me some other stuff, but he also did, in terms of video games, retro games, he hooked me up with a copy of Earth Defense Force for the Super Nintendo. So thank you very much, Cody. In terms of boxed and complete games, I picked up a copy of Stunt Race FX, which is a really impressive, very impressive looking FX chip Super Nintendo game, which I've heard is actually a pretty decent game, so I'm looking forward to checking that out. It's fully 3D rendered. It looks like it's rendered in 3D. It's super impressive. Check out a video online of it. RPG-wise, I picked up a copy of Lufia 2 Rise of the Sinistrals, and despite having never played Lufia 1 on the Super Nintendo, many people think that you should start with this one first, because this is actually taking place before the events of Lufia 1. So, And this has it's pretty puzzle heavy in some of the dungeons, so I'm not a huge fan of that, but I'm really curious to see how I'll end up liking this game, so sometime this year I'll get around to checking this out. Probably my favorite game so far that I've picked up, well, behind Treasure Hunter G in terms of like complete games that are officially released in America, I've had a lot of fun playing this so far, and that is Demon's Crest. And this is it's set from within the Ghouls and Ghosts, Ghosts and Goblins universe. Firebrand, I believe his name is, this guy here. He also has a series on the Game Boy called Gargoyles Quest, and I think it's also on the NES. I haven't played any of those Gargoyle games before, so. But this is sort of like a really dark, horror-themed action, side-scrolling adventure game. Think sort of similar to the style of like a Castlevania, Super Castlevania, or something like that. Really awesome sprite work in this game. The monsters and enemies look amazing. Really moody and atmospheric. The music is really good. It's got an overworld map that's in mode 7. So as you move around the overworld map, it's sort of like got this 3D effect to it. Really challenging game, but it's a ton of fun. I've had a lot of fun with this one. Also, for the Super Nintendo, I got a copy. I'm still sick, by the way, if you can't tell. This cold ever since I got back from PAX. It's ridiculous. I got a copy of Secret of Evermore for the Super Nintendo. Another RPG that I never got to play by Squaresoft, and I've heard some pretty mixed things on this game, but looking forward to checking that out. Recently, I also picked up a copy of Cybernator. I was watching some reviews on this game, and the game looked like it was a lot of fun. And it's sort of like a side-scrolling game where you control a mech, and he has some crazy over-the-top firepower, especially like this flamethrower that he gets. It just looked like a lot of fun, and it was really cheap to pick up, so happy to have that in my collection. Also, I got a complete copy of King of Dragons. This is a side-scrolling beat-em-up game by Capcom. I played through this and beat it. I live-streamed it, and it was okay. It was pretty fun. Like any beat-em-up, it's better off probably played with 2 players, so the single player got a little bit stale after a while, but I really like the theme of all the bosses in the game sort of being these different dragons and everything. And I did just, after I bought the Super Nintendo version, I was able to find an arcade machine at my local arcade place that it was like a multi-arcade machine, MAME, and it had a copy of the arcade version of King of Dragons, which I played, and it beats the hell out of the Super Nintendo version. But if you have, no means of playing King of Dragons in the arcade, this is definitely not a bad option.